It was World War II. The little Jewish girl that Hendrika de Vries family hid in their home was taken, and her mother was interrogated at gunpoint. Hendrika's story, which took this little Dutch girl from behind the Iron Curtain to the new Australia, fighting her inner demons when faced with broken dreams and loss of hope, but who ultimately discovers her own unique path in life, is going to touch you in every way.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Hendrika's life experiences as a child in Nazi-occupied Amsterdam, an immigrant and champion swimmer as a teenage girl in 1950s Australia, and a move to the United States in the turbulent mid-1960s as a young wife and mother, infuse her writing and teaching with historical depth and personal perspective. Hendrika de Vries is a retired family therapist, a teacher, and a writer with a background in both theology and depth psychology. She is an author of 2 memoirs, which she's going to talk about today. The first one is Open Turns, From Dutch Girl to New Australian. And the second, When a Toy Dog Became a Wolf and the Moon Broke Curfew. Okay, you got me there. Welcome, Hendrika.
Well, thank you, Carol, and thank you for your wonderful introduction.
Okay, well, I am so anxious to hear your story, so tell us your story.
Well, I want to start with how the title of your book, Pray the Answer, Not the Problem, reminded me so much of my mother. A lot of my stories involve my mother, who taught me at a very early age that intentions are like prayers. You send them into the universe, and if you pay attention, they come back as destiny. And that reminded me so much of the title of your book.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. So my story, it's a big, long story. I'll just start. You already said I was a little girl in Nazi-occupied Amsterdam, and my I was a sheltered little daddy's girl, actually, for the first 5 years of my life, raised to believe I would live happily ever after. And my dad was a storyteller who taught me the magic of story and imagination. I really adored him. Then, when he was in the process of joining the resistance, because this was the middle of World War II, he was deported with other former Dutch military men to a prisoner of war labor camp in Germany. And suddenly, in the midst of the Nazi occupation of Amsterdam, my mother, an ordinary 1940s housewife without a career, became a single mom with a 5-year-old child, which was me. And she joined the men and women of the resistance movement who had originally recruited my father.
Oh, wow.
And in the next in the next few months, she decided to bring a Jewish girl to live with us. The Jewish girl became like a sister to me. We slept in the same bed. And in the next 2 years, my mom and I would experience brutal betrayal and loss, violence,
Mm.
starvation, and eventually we had to run for our lives in a mass shooting when Amsterdam was liberated. The core of the story is two things. My mother embodied resistance and spiritual stamina. She was an amazing woman. She believed in a greater good, sense of purpose. To her, God was all about love for everyone, love and inclusion. We were very fortunate. My dad came back. My Jewish foster sister survived the camps and came back.
Mm. Wow.
So that was the beginning of my story, and that's encapsulated in one of my books, the book about the toy wolf. But then a few years later, Holland had a hard time recovering from the war, and wars don't stop when the shooting stops.
Mhm, mhm.
Wars linger on, as we know, in people's psyches. So at that time, Australia desperately needed immigrants, and they sent fast talking salesmen to Amsterdam with wonderful brochures of the land of tomorrow, where the sky was always blue, koalas were hanging in every tree, you could get work aplenty, and there were wide open spaces to begin a new life. And they just sort of flooded Amsterdam with that. And my parents were uh, I would say seduced, maybe, or they were ready, like so many war-wearied people in Europe who had endured 5 years of just hell, um, to emigrate, start a new life in Australia. And when we moved to Australia, I was 13 years old. So that's what starts the second part of my life, which is in the book Open Turns, where I've had to really deal with what did it mean to be a teenager who was also an immigrant. And I struggled with that in my book. Also, I really had to be honest and let her have a voice. That and when she was in Holland, she was just a little Dutch girl. She belonged. When she was in Australia, she had to speak another language. She had to kind of earn her sense of belonging there. What was her place? And so I really struggled with that whole immigrant issue. But I was very fortunate. Australians, I discovered, love sports. And they really like people who are good at sports. And I was a really good swimmer. So I discovered a way to belong and find my place in Australia as a champion swimmer. I actually swam in the nationals and got close to even swimming in the Olympics. Didn't quite make it, but I was friends and swam with all the Olympians. So uh, I found my place. And then I fell in love and married a man who wanted to move to America for his career. And um, we did. We moved to Denver for his career. And that's how I ended up in the United States. So
Did your
that's
mother come with you then?
my parents actually joined us. They came to the United States too. Yeah, they did. My parents and my younger sister. Yeah.
What kind of influence did your parents have on you and everything that you were going through to give you the tenacious spirit?
That is such a core question. And the interesting thing is that when people read my books, that's one of the things they always say to me, my gosh, your parents were amazing. I was so fortunate. My mother she taught me strength and faith. She had a very strong belief in, like I said, a God who was a God of love. She believed in helping people. She believed in her dreams, which she believed had a divine origin. And she just taught me that strength. Like I said earlier, like I love the title of your book of she prayed to the outcome, the answer. She believed in
Mm,
that positive answer, not like a wish where your wish would get fulfilled, but that your destiny, you somehow you took part in your own destiny by being who you are. And she really um, she just instilled that in me. She also taught me that by reaching out and being part of the resistance, she was so respected by the people of
of
the
course.
resistance. And after the war, I saw that. I saw what a amazingly respected woman she was. My dad he had three sisters and loved his mother, who was widowed at an early age. He really loved and respected strong women. So I saw him respect my
Hmm.
mother's strengths. So that helped. So her ability to to have this positive outlook in life and the strength to help others really, I think, went into my flesh and bones because I've always turned to that. And then my dad was an interesting man. He the cosmic universe was really his cathedral. He had this incredible awe for the mystery of the universe and a great imagination. He was the one who helped me imagine my little toy dog as a wolf, which in my book, when a toy dog becomes a wolf, I tell the story of how that helped me during the 2 years that he was gone, helped me keep his presence alive. That little toy dog was that had become a wolf and embodied that strength, that wolf-like strength. So he had this great imagination, this great awe for the universe. And in fact, I have a whole chapter in my book, Open Turns, about where I'm really a moody, angry teenager because at the time we were living in the outback where I had no friends, no swimming pool. But he took me for a walk in the desert, in the sort of mallee scrub desert, and he helped me hear the language of that ancient land. And it's one of my favorite chapters actually in the book, that because that was the core of my dad. He helped me believe that there was enough awe and mystery in the universe that we could sort of lean into. So between the two of them, and they respected each other, so they modeled a great relationship, male-female relationship for me. So uh, I was very fortunate to have them as parents. Very fortunate.
No, it's interesting. I just heard from my grandson just this past week that said that the only people he would want to pattern his marriage after, and he's 14, would be us, his grandparents, not other parents, not other grandparents, not even his own
Uh,
parents. So I totally hear what you're saying. And the point being, kids watch.
yes,
They're
yes,
watching, they're listening, they're hearing, and they're making their decisions, which essentially, from what you've been saying all along here in the last couple minutes, is that's your foundation. And
totally.
and
Yeah,
your heritage, which I thank God every day for my heritage,
yeah.
because a lot of kids don't have that. So anyway,
No,
that's a side thing, but I
no,
did want
no,
to
I
say
think
I
it's
appreciate
important.
that. Yes, I
Yeah,
really
no, I
appreciate
think it's really
it. Okay.
important, Carol. I really believe that. I think watching my parents go through the
Mhm.
struggles, and
Right.
I even have a chapter in the book with the toy wolf where they, after the war, my mother had been a part of the resistance movement for 2 years, and she befriended, male resistance workers. My dad had been away. And I have this chapter where they struggle in their marriage and how the decisions they come to. And I was in awe of that when I was writing that again and remembering that. I was in awe of their ability to adapt
Mm.
and to deal with the challenges in that ethical, deep, strong way.
Yes, yes,
You
yes,
know?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
But we're going to take a quick 15-second break. And when we come back, I want you to share with us
Carol Graham would
about
like to
both of
show
your
you the path
memoirs.
from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
You have written two memoirs. Why two? What is the difference? And what do you want to tell us about them and who should buy them?
Well, I think in changing times, everyone should buy them. Everyone should read
Okay,
them.
I hear you. Okay.
I think both my books kind of address the question of how do we find our place or our purpose or even who we are when the world keeps shifting under our feet.
Right.
And certainly, both my memoirs are about the world shifting under our feet. My first memoir, When a Toy Dog Became a Wolf and the Moon Broke Curfew, is about my childhood in Nazi-occupied Amsterdam.
Okay.
And it's about the resilience and the strength uh, that I saw and grew up with, how the trauma that we experienced, and yet the amazing tenacity, strength, resistance that I
Mhm.
also witnessed, which gave me my strength, and I think really has stood me well in my long life. You know, I'm 88 years old. It's been an amazing life, but I was so lucky. I did experience a lot of trauma, and I do talk about that in the book. But I also experienced so much strength, and the story. I think it's a good story because many people really told me it was a good story and it won many awards. And it's a story that lets us dip into hope and that we're stronger than we think and that
Right.
we don't have to be identified with the trauma that we experience. My mother would never let us be a victim, my sister and me. She
Mhm,
just
mhm.
wouldn't. She always told us we were the heroines of our own stories. So I think that book, seeing their strengths and seeing how people lived through that um, and adapted and held on to hope and faith and belief in their own purpose. Um, it gives us hope in these shifting times, because we're living in some difficult times today too. So maybe not quite as drastic as what I went through in World War II in the occupation, but life is always shifting for people. When I was a therapist, I was always working with people going through transitions, whether through illness or career loss, or, even in Santa Barbara when we had fires, the loss of a home. How do we deal with the shifting grounds beneath
Right.
our feet?
Right.
So that was the first book. Then that book was so popular, and then people kept asking me, well, what happened in Australia? Tell us about Australia. And I kept thinking, oh, how can the story of a teenage girl, a Dutch teenage girl in Australia coming of age, how can that be of interest? So I started right. I finally, my especially my close friends nudged me hard enough that I finally decided to start writing it. And the most difficult part, Carol, was letting this teenager have a voice. In my first book,
Mhm,
it was a sweet little girl going through
mhm. Right.
horrible tragedies. In my second book, it was a teenager. And Yes, I did want to write about adapting to Australia. What was Australia like in the 1950s, especially for a young girl, becoming a woman. There was a lot of kind of expectations that all she should be thinking about was to get married, stay at home, and have babies. And that was not who I was as a teenager with my background, with a mother who had withstood, guns at her head during the
No
occupation.
kidding. Right.
So, so the teenager in me would say when I was writing, "Oh, I want to write about this," or "I want to say this," and then I would say, "Oh, you don't really want to share that. You don't really." Then she'd say, "You can't silence me. You can't say." And so, writing that book was actually quite interesting for me because I ended up giving her voice, and it's as one of my friends said, who was born in Germany, and well, I was born in Holland. I was thinking of your parents, but she was born in Germany and came to America, and so she experienced being an immigrant and having to adapt to a new country. And she said the book was honest, sometimes sad, and ultimately hopeful. And what she saw in it was that the sadness of having to leave everything behind and having to adapt to a whole new life where your identity is not known,
Right. Exactly.
and she saw that. And then the second part was that um, the sort of the honesty of it, the honesty of a teenager, a teenager who at one point I really had the intention. And remember, my mother said life was all about intentions. My mother was an athlete as well as an amazing
Oh,
woman and
really?
resistant. Yeah, she was a national running and speed walking champion, um, who uh, uh, who really helped me face life with kind of that athletic discipline and focus. So it was that was also there, but it was where was I with the 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 honesty of the teenager who wanted to be a champion. And at one point I broke an Olympian's record, a
Oh, my word.
state record. So I had a moment of fame, and my dreams seemed to be coming true. And then there were some really big challenges, some misogyny, some questioning. And I had to deal with the teenage shift, the teenage moodiness, and how
Mm.
does a girl coming of age deal with that? And what came through was the bursting hormones, the sexuality. And so I had to write about that too and put that in the book. So I think it's an honest book about a young adult girl in a certain time, in the 1950s.
Mhm.
And then it ends up very hopeful because I do find my place, I find my strength, and I'm on my way to the United States at the end of the book. So I think it's an interesting book from that perspective and quite different from the first book. Does that kind of tell
Oh,
you
yeah, that's
something?
excellent. And also, you said, now which book won awards, or did they both?
The first book won a lot of awards. The second book won its gold winner writing for nonfiction, and it was what did Kirkus interview days? It's always seen as a deeply felt memoir. I was praised as a talented writer, which was kind of nice by Kirkus.
No kidding.
I'll
Hold
take
on to
that.
that one, right?
I'll take that one. Yeah. So, and it's more recent. Yeah.
Right.
So, I think the first one may be more universal than the second one because uh, it is about World War II, which
Right. Of course.
it's, but I think they together, the second one is definitely a sequel to the first one. So,
It,
and I think, like I said, both of them address that question of transitions. In the first one, it was being a little girl living with trauma, loss of dad, the trauma, lots of violence. In the second one, it's dealing with the challenges of being a little immigrant, a female girl in the 1950s. Um, so I think, how do we live with challenges? How do we live with being unsure of ourselves, whether it's as an immigrant or a teenager or anyone in a life transition? So I think the books share that universal challenge of how do we find our strengths? How do we remember who we are? Where do we draw? Uh, where do we go for our strengths?
And how did you address that?
Well, in my books, I really tell the story. It's the stories that um, I show how I move through them, and my parents are a big part of it. They are everywhere throughout the book. Like I said, my father taking me for the walk in the bush, uh, my mother reminding me that she thinks I may have a different purpose than being an Olympic swimmer, that there may be something else in my destiny. So they are woven through the stories. So I don't have a black and white answer so much as this 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 strength and resilience, um, and that there's always a possibility that's sort of woven through the stories. Which I saw so much in your book and your story. I love that about the just your title really, Pray the Answer. I went, oh my gosh, that's the title I want for my book.
The area of how does one prepare themselves for trauma when they've never experienced it?
Whoa.
See, you
Mm.
come from a place, and I do too, where, that's what made us, right?
Yes,
But there are a
yes,
lot of people that now, and you're talking about, you know, in today's world, where they've
right.
had it pretty easy all along, and now some things that may be coming down, and also some things that are happening even within their own cities, etc., that they've never had to deal with before. How do you think they could um, survive?
That's a brilliant question. And of course, you're right. As a therapist, the people that came to me for therapy had also already experienced trauma.
Mhm.
Um, And we're looking for guidance in it, but how do people who have not experienced, who've had kind of an easy, good life,
Right.
I think maybe one way is our stories. Um,
Yes.
a friend of
Good.
mine, Maureen Murdoch, who wrote a book, brilliant book, The Heroine's Journey, and she also wrote a book about memoir writing. And in it, she says that our stories are, I believe she says, I'm paraphrasing, something like they're the building blocks for our children's memories. It's like
Mhm.
so that our human stories can help people connect with the trauma. I'm friends with a lot of women authors, and they write about their trauma. And I think their sharing of trauma in whatever form helps people connect with how many of us survived, how we found
Right.
resilience,
Good.
you
Good.
know, how we dealt with it. Our stories are in a way, we're the witnessing activists. Somebody said that at one point, and but I'm stealing the phrase. I think we're witnessing activists through our stories and helping people with our stories and say, we did this. We can get through it. Um, it's amazing. I have a story in my book that it's about a little boy. When I was a swimmer in Australia, we had a program to help children who'd been paralyzed by polio. It was during the polio epidemic. And I was one of the swimmers assigned to a little boy. And I remember helping him swim. And he couldn't use his legs, but he could use his arms. And telling him that, he was the champion. And I think helping by our showing how not only did we ourselves survive, but how we could help others survive, like my mother hiding, the Jewish girl. Um, those are the stories that are they, as my friend says, they're building blocks for the generations or the people that need that reminder that yeah, life wasn't always as simple and easy as it has been maybe for the last few decades. That life has always been challenging, but we human beings are amazing creatures, and the universe is a vast, mysterious realm of possibility. So I think our stories are really important, Carol.
And also, you remember stories.
Yes, 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 I do. I love stories. My family was a family of readers, so I've read stories. I have a kind of quirky memory too that I remember interactions. I remember relationships. I may not remember, the details of a movie I saw last year or a book I read, but I'll remember the interactions, the relationships, and it's a.
That's
Uh,
interesting.
yeah,
Mm.
it's a very interesting memory. Yeah, it drives my husband crazy sometimes. It's like you remember that conversation?
Yeah,
Or
no kidding. Why that? Right.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
this has been awesome. You have touched my heart because you're so relatable
Oh,
and
oh,
you have an empathy that is evident, not just from what you went through, but I know that you love people, and that came across very, very clearly. Now, anything in the future? Are you thinking of another book?
oh my gosh. And, you know, um, the writing part sounds nice. The publishing, the
Oh,
marketing.
exactly, exactly.
At my age, it's like every day is such a gift, and so um, I will be writing, of course. I'll be writing my reflections, but whether they'll be turned into a book, actually, I have a running joke with my youngest daughter, who writes wonderfully, and my daughter-in-law, who feels like a daughter. And I tell the two of them they both have great imaginations that they can write my third book and make it up as
Oh,
they
there
go
you go.
along.
Okay. Keep notes. Make sure you
There
keep
you go.
notes. Oh, that's awesome. Well, you are a very young 88, and I'm sure that many people tell you that.
Yeah, that's my mom's genes. She always had that too. Yeah,
Mm.
she actually used to say when she was older, "Oh, I wish I would look a little older, then people would treat me nicer."
Oh, that's interesting, right? And
Yeah,
then later that changed, right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Well,
yeah.
again, I thank you. This has been awesome. I would like to keep you here for the next
Uh,
day or two. I'm sure that we could find lots of things to talk about. But the bottom line is, I appreciated what you shared. I know that it will touch hearts. It will be on many different channels. I also will put it on, I will feature it actually on my website, which is prayingmiracles.com. And so you will see that there as well. And because
okay.
you are a miracle story, there's no question about that. And so I thank you so much for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Oh, thank you, Carol. I loved and appreciated being on here. It's a great honor, and I love your view of life.
Aw,
I really do. Thank you for letting me share my stories and promoting my books. And
you bet.
thank you for who you are. I really mean that.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.